Hello and welcome to the world of stories. I'm sure you're here for a bedtime story to help you drift into sleep. And so, let's begin. Dr. Drosselmeyer was an old man with a secret. In his youth, he had been the most nimble-fingered, highly skilled craftsman in the entire royal court. Dr. Drosselmeyer had made clocks that were mechanical wonders. Some chimed with 100 tinkling bells. Others were decorated with tiny musicians that danced and placed their music as they struck the hour. Some even had secret doors, out of which little birds fluttered and flew around the room, chirping the passing minutes. Yes, Dr. Drosselmeyer's clock had been the talk of the palace, but the most amazing thing he had ever made was a mousetrap. Dr. Drosselmeyer had invented a brilliant clockwork trap that caught mice in their hundreds, 24 hours a day. Everyone in the palace had been delighted, except for the Mouse King. He too had lived in the palace with his subjects. Now he was forced to leave and find another home, and he was furious about it. The Mouse King knew powerful magic, and he took his revenge on Dr. Drosselmeyer by turning his nephew into an ugly wooden doll. The doll wore a painted soldier's uniform and had a prince's crown painted mockingly onto its head, and its jaws moved so it could crack nuts between its teeth. The Mouse King's spell was so strong that there was only one way to undo it. Firstly, the Nutcracker Prince had somehow to kill the evil Mouse King, and secondly, a little girl had to love him in spite of his ugliness. Well, Dr. Drosselmeyer had no idea where the Mouse King had gone, and he certainly didn't know a little girl kind enough to take pity on the poor, ugly wooden doll, and so his nephew had stayed a Nutcracker. From that moment on, Dr. Drosselmeyer had never made another clock. He lost all his heart for mechanical things, and so he lost his job at the palace too. Dr. Drosselmeyer blamed himself entirely for his nephew's dreadful disappearance, and he had never breathed a word of what had happened to anyone. But ever since, he had been trying to find a way to break the Mouse King's spell, and at last, he thought he had. Dr. Drosselmeyer's goddaughter, Clara, had grown into the kindest little girl anyone could wish to meet. If any little girl was going to take pity on the stiff, glaring Nutcracker Prince, it would be Clara. Now, it was Christmas Eve, and Dr. Drosselmeyer had arrived at Clara's house trembling with excitement. He wasn't excited because there was a party going on with games, music, and dancing. No, Dr. Drosselmeyer was excited because tonight was the night he hoped the evil magic would be undone and his nephew would return to life. While the party guests talked and joked and laughed together, Dr. Drosselmeyer set about emptying the huge bag he had brought with him. It was filled with gingerbread and shortcake, candy walking sticks and sugar pigs, nuts and bonbons, nuggets and humbugs. High and low, in every corner of the room, Dr. Drosselmeyer heaped piles of all the Mouse King's favorite things to eat. That should tempt him out of wherever he's hiding, thought Dr. Drosselmeyer determinedly. Then it was time to give Clara her Christmas present. The little girl's eyes opened wide with excitement as she stripped off the sparkly paper. But her face suddenly fell as she saw the ugly Nutcracker Prince. Then gently, Clara stroked the doll's face. He wasn't cute, he wasn't cuddly, he wasn't even new. But that was exactly why Clara decided she loved him. She couldn't bear to think of leaving him all alone, laughed at and unloved, especially at Christmas time. Clara clutched the Nutcracker Prince close to her and hugged him tight, and Dr. Drosselmeyer slipped away from the party, his heart light with hope. When the party was over, it was bedtime at last. Clara tucked the wooden doll up next to her. "I love you," she whispered, just before she fell asleep. "I will look after you always." And that night, Clara had a very strange dream. She dreamt that the Nutcracker Prince woke up beside her. He smiled at Clara and held her hand, and led her downstairs. There was scuffling and squeaking coming from the drawing room, and when Clara peeped around the door, she saw a terrible sight. There were mice everywhere. They were climbing all over Dr. Drosselmeyer's goodies, fighting and biting to get at the sweets. And worst of all, a horrible 7-headed mouse was standing in the middle of the carpet, cackling with glee at all the arguing and the mess. The 7-headed mouse wore 7 golden crowns, and Clara could tell he must be the king of the evil creatures. Very bravely, the Nutcracker Prince charged at the gruesome Mouse King with a sword glinting in his hand and began to fight furiously, but he was completely outnumbered. The mice swarmed to the king's defense. They dragged the Nutcracker Prince to the ground, and he disappeared under 1,000 biting, clawing bodies. Just as the Mouse King threw back his head and began to laugh, Clara tore her slipper off her foot and threw it at him with all her might. Wham! It hit the Mouse King on 4 of his 7 horrible heads. He staggered to and fro for a second, and then collapsed dead to the floor. As soon as the mice saw that the leader was no more, their courage deserted them. They hurried to scoop up his body, and then they were gone, streaming off through cracks in the wall, holes in the skirting, and gaps in the floorboards. The Nutcracker Prince ran to Clara and kissed her. "Thank you for all you have done for me," he whispered, and there were tears sparkling in his painted eyes. "Let me repay you by taking you on a wonderful journey to my kingdom, the realm of sweets." It was the most wonderful dream Clara had ever had. She traveled through forests made of barley sugar, crossed the rivers that ran with lemonade, picked flowers of sherbet, walked on paths of chocolate, and visited the Nutcracker Prince's gingerbread castle. In fact, Clara was very sorry to be woken up, even though it was Christmas Day itself. She hugged the wooden doll and told him, "You are the best present I have ever had," and she could have sworn that his smile was even broader than usual. Meanwhile, across the city, Dr. Drosselmeyer had also woken up to find the best present he had ever had. There, sprawled underneath his Christmas tree, sleeping an exhausted but peaceful sleep, was his brave, handsome nephew. That's it for tonight. Thank you for listening. Have a great night. Please like and subscribe if you like my contents. I shall update daily and continue with my best efforts. Good night.